Some people never learn to control their inner storms. They move through life carried by anger, reacting before thinking, losing themselves in the smallest moments. People suffer when their emotions lead them. Most men today break not because life is hard, but because their minds shake at every challenge. A single insult, a small setback, a moment of pressure, and they snap. They chase strength on the outside while collapsing on the inside. They confuse power with aggression. They mistake loudness for certainty. They build lives that crumble whenever someone pushes back. This is the silent struggle of modern life. People explode over small things. Arguments become battles. Stress becomes rage. And the world around them keeps adding more triggers, more noise, more pressure. But hundreds of years ago, Japanese warriors faced something far more dangerous than a stressful job or an uncomfortable conversation. They faced death itself, and yet their minds did not move. They trained a principle called Fudoshin, poetic translation, the immovable mind. Literal meaning, a mind that stays still even when the world shakes. Its purpose was simple: remain calm in the chaos of battle. Samurai like Miyamoto Musashi mastered this state, not by force, not by aggression, but by refusing to let emotion dictate their actions. Their bodies moved, but their minds did not shake. And today, this isn't just ancient philosophy. It matters more than ever. In a world driven by emotional reaction, Fudoshin becomes a form of power. Stoic philosophy tells us the same truth. You cannot control events, only your response. Modern neuroscience confirms it. Emotional reactions are brain patterns, and patterns can be rewired. If you understand the immovable mind, you understand how to break the cycle of anger. If you learn it, you become unshakable. And this story will show you how one man did exactly that. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and tell me in the comments the habit you want to master. Now, back to the story. Daniel wasn't an angry man by nature, but somewhere along the way, anger became the only language his mind understood. He didn't notice it at first. A sharp tone in a meeting, a tense reply in a group chat, a quiet argument at home that turned into something bigger than it needed to be. But over the months, the pattern became impossible to ignore. Daniel worked at a mid-sized office where small deadlines felt like constant battles. One morning during a routine meeting, a co-worker misread a number on a report. A tiny mistake, a normal human moment. But Daniel's jaw tightened, his voice rose, and suddenly the room went silent. People avoided eye contact. Someone shifted their chair away, and Daniel felt that familiar mix of satisfaction and shame. Anger first, regret after. That wasn't the only incident. A week later, he snapped at a friend over a harmless joke. 2 days after that, he raised his voice at his younger brother for interrupting him. At home, he slammed a door harder than he meant to, then spent the rest of the night replaying the moment again and again. The smallest triggers became explosions. Someone walking too slowly, a delayed message, traffic that didn't move, a co-worker's suggestion he didn't ask for. Every irritation felt personal. Every challenge felt like an attack. Daniel tried to calm down. He really did. Some mornings he promised himself, "Today, I won't lose it." But by noon, he was back in the same spiral. He checked his phone dozens of times a day, searching for distractions, dopamine, or escape. He opened a task, stared at it, and quit after 30 seconds because frustration kicked in. At night, he scrolled endlessly, overstimulated, unable to sleep, replaying every mistake and every angry moment. The consequences grew louder. His supervisor called him aside one afternoon, not to reprimand him, but to check in. The tone was polite, but the message was clear. People were uncomfortable. They didn't want him in certain meetings. Some felt they had to walk on eggshells. At home, the tension built even more. Daniel's partner had started to withdraw, choosing silence over the risk of another argument. A friend stopped inviting him to gatherings. Another joked, "You're always on edge, man." But the joke didn't feel like a joke. Daniel felt embarrassed, exposed, and slowly isolated. Weeks passed, then months, and nothing changed. Inside his mind, everything felt louder, thoughts racing, heart beating faster, jaw clenched, shoulders tight, sleep broken. Every morning he woke up already tired. His emotional world felt like a storm that never ended. No control, no pause, just reaction after reaction. One afternoon, everything broke. During a team presentation, someone mildly criticized part of his work. A simple suggestion, nothing harsh. But Daniel exploded, his voice rising, hands shaking, words coming out faster than he could control them. People in the room froze. A few looked away. One person quietly whispered, "Not again." And suddenly, Daniel saw himself as they saw him, unpredictable, volatile, and lost. The moment ended quickly. The shame lasted much longer. He walked out of the office, sat alone in his car, and felt the weight of months collapsing on him. This wasn't who he wanted to be. This wasn't strength. This wasn't control. This was a man ruled by his own emotions. This was his breaking point. But he didn't know yet. This was also the moment his real journey would begin. Daniel didn't plan on meeting anyone that day. He wasn't looking for guidance. He wasn't searching for ancient wisdom. He just wanted something, anything, that could quiet the noise inside him. A co-worker casually mentioned a small martial arts class nearby. Not a flashy gym, not a competitive studio, just a quiet place run by an older instructor who teaches discipline more than fighting. Daniel didn't think much of it, but the words stuck with him. Discipline, control, calm. He needed all three. That evening, with his mind still heavy from the outburst at work, he walked into the small dojo. The floor was worn. The uniforms were simple. The atmosphere was calm, almost plain. But the presence of the instructor stood out immediately. His name was Sensei Hayato. He was in his late 60s, lean, composed, and steady in a way Daniel couldn't describe. Not intimidating, not stern, just anchored, like a man who hadn't been moved by emotion in years. Hayato watched Daniel for only a few seconds before speaking. "Your eyes are busy," he said quietly. Daniel frowned. "What does that mean?" Hayato nodded once. "It means your mind is louder than your voice." It was the first time anyone had put his struggle into words that simply. The class began with slow, deliberate movements, but Hayato didn't focus on technique. He focused on presence, breath, stillness, awareness. Halfway through the session, Hayato approached Daniel and said, "What you're missing is Fudoshin." Daniel repeated the word slowly. "Fudōshin?" Hayato nodded. Poetic translation, the immovable mind. Literal meaning, a mind that does not shake. Daniel listened, unsure what it meant for someone like him. Hayato continued. Samurai relied on it. Warriors like Miyamoto Musashi lived through impossible battles not because of perfect technique, but because their minds did not move. Even in chaos, they remained centered. He explained a small historical anecdote, simple and direct. Musashi once faced multiple opponents at once. Most men would panic or react without thinking, but Musashi stayed calm, observing everything without emotional distortion. His stillness made him untouchable. Hayato turned back to Daniel. This is what you lack. Not strength, not power, stillness. You react because your mind moves before you do. Daniel swallowed hard. The words hit deeper than he expected. Hayato then tied it to something modern, something Daniel could grasp. Stoics understood this. They trained themselves to control their response, not the world. And today, neuroscience proves the same truth. Emotion is a pattern. With practice, patterns can be rewritten. Daniel looked at the floor. Can someone like me learn that? Hayato didn't hesitate. A scattered mind cannot win, but a trained mind can become unshakable. For the first time in a long time, Daniel felt a quiet sense of direction. This was the beginning of his real training. Chapter 2. The first lessons. Daniel returned to the dojo the next evening, not because he felt confident, but because he felt tired of being controlled by his own reactions. He needed something new, something different. Sensei Hayato greeted him with a simple nod. No lecture, no judgment, just presence. The lesson began with something Daniel didn't expect: stillness. Stand, Hayato said. Daniel stood. Breathe, he continued. Daniel inhaled slowly. Now stay here. Do nothing. Minutes passed. Daniel shifted. His jaw tightened. His thoughts wandered. He felt restless, almost irritated. Hayato stepped beside him. This is the first battle, he said. If you cannot stand still for 1 minute, how will you stand still in anger? Daniel swallowed. It sounded absurd, yet painfully true. The next exercise was even simpler. Observe. Hayato instructed him to notice his breath, his posture, the rise of impatience, and the way his mind drifted. For the first time in years, Daniel wasn't fighting anyone. He was confronting himself. Later that evening, Hayato handed him a small notebook. Write when anger comes, he said. Not why, just when. Notice the pattern. Daniel nodded. It was the first concrete step towards something he didn't understand yet. On his way home, someone cut him off in traffic. His chest tightened, but this time he paused before reacting. Just a second, but a second longer than usual. He didn't realize it then, but that small moment was the beginning of change. But the change didn't last. What happened next surprised him. Chapter 3. The setbacks. Over the next week, Daniel tried to practice stillness. He tried to slow his breathing. He tried to notice anger before it exploded. But life didn't suddenly become gentle. Work pressures increased. Deadlines piled up. A co-worker dismissed one of his ideas, and the old fire surged. Daniel felt his voice rising before he even knew it. The moment ended quickly, but the shame stayed. That night, Daniel sat at his table, notebook open. He saw the same pattern on paper that Hayato had seen in his eyes. Anger in meetings, anger at home, anger in small interactions, a mind that shook at every touch. He returned to the dojo the next day, frustrated. I tried, Daniel said, but I failed again. Hayato looked at him calmly. No, he said. You learned. Daniel frowned. Hayato continued. Fudoshin is not built in a week. Musashi trained for decades. Why would you expect to master your mind in 7 days? Daniel lowered his gaze. He felt childish, impatient, unrealistic. Hayato added, when you fall, that is when the training becomes real. Then he asked Daniel a simple question. Be honest, Does this happen to you too? And Daniel nodded. The lesson that night focused on breath under pressure. Not slow breathing in silence, but slow breathing when irritated. Hayato made Daniel hold a stance until his legs trembled, then said, "Now breathe." Daniel's chest rose and fell slowly as heat and tension built. This was emotional training disguised as physical effort, holding calm when the body demanded reaction. By the end of the session, Daniel felt drained, but something inside him felt clearer, even if only slightly. Still, he sensed the journey ahead would be long, and he didn't yet understand how long. Chapter 4. The Practice of Stillness. Months passed. Daniel committed to the training with surprising consistency, not perfectly, but steadily. Every morning, he spent 5 minutes in silence. Every afternoon, he practiced a short breathing pattern. Every night, he journaled his emotional triggers. His notebook pages filled quickly. Frustration at work, 10:42 a.m. Annoyed during lunch, 1:17 p.m. Anger spike on commute, 5:23 p.m. He wasn't fixing anything yet, but he was finally seeing his mind clearly. Hayato taught him the next layer of Fudoshin, observing thoughts without becoming them. When anger comes, Hayato said, say, "I feel anger, not I am angry." Why? Daniel asked. Hayato replied, because the warrior is not the emotion. He is the one who sees it. This idea felt strange at first, but Daniel practiced it daily, and slowly he noticed something. The moment he labeled the emotion, it weakened. Not gone, but softer. Neuroscience supported this too. Hayato explained that labeling emotions activates the prefrontal cortex, calming the amygdala's reaction. Daniel didn't remember the details, but he remembered the effect. One afternoon, Daniel faced a test at work. Someone criticized a project he worked hard on. His chest tightened. His hands curled slightly. His mind began to sharpen into anger, but he caught it. He paused. He breathed. "I feel anger," he told himself quietly, and the wave didn't crash. He responded calmly. The co-worker blinked, surprised. Even Daniel felt unfamiliar to himself. It wasn't mastery, it wasn't Fudōshin, but it was progress. But things were about to get harder. Chapter 5. The storm. 6 months into his journey, Daniel faced the biggest test yet. A critical project at work collapsed due to someone else's mistake. But Daniel was the one blamed. Emails flooded in, voices rose. People looked to him with frustration and pressure. It was the perfect storm, the kind of moment that once triggered explosions. Anger surged in his chest. His jaw tightened automatically. His mind began racing through past patterns, but something inside him shifted. He heard Hayato's voice in his memory. "When the world shakes, you do not." Daniel inhaled. Slow, steady, intentional. He paused for those 3 seconds that felt like a lifetime. He grounded his feet. He focused on his breath. He chose stillness. His mind didn't move. He addressed the situation calmly. Clear, focused, unshaken. Co-workers glanced at each other, surprised by the change. Someone whispered, "He's different now." And Daniel realized something important. This moment changed everything. But the journey wasn't finished. Chapter 6. The Turning Point. Weeks after the storm, Daniel returned to the dojo with a different posture, more grounded, more present, more aware of himself. Hayato noticed instantly. "You finally understand," he said. Daniel shook his head. "Not fully." Hayato smiled. You understand enough. You did not react. You chose. They sat on the floor for a short conversation. "What does Fudoshin feel like?" Daniel asked. Hayato answered simply, "Like being able to stand in fire without becoming it." Daniel nodded. For the first time, the idea didn't feel mythical. It felt possible. Hayato explained the final teaching: identity. You have been trying to stop being angry. That is not the warrior's path. The warrior becomes a man who chooses calm as identity. Daniel understood. He wasn't fighting anger. He was becoming someone new. Then Hayato asked him a question meant for the viewer too. "Does this sound familiar? Have you ever felt your identity shifting?" Daniel reflected on his journey. The late nights, the triggers, the journaling, the breathing, the setbacks, the storm he passed through. This wasn't a technique anymore. It was a transformation. Before leaving, Daniel looked at Hayato and said, "I feel different." Hayato replied, "No, you are different." Daniel stepped outside with a sense of clarity he hadn't felt in years. He didn't realize it yet, but he was finally beginning to change. Daniel had experienced small victories, painful setbacks, and one defining breakthrough. But Hayato made it clear, moments of control were not the goal. True mastery required a system, a structure, a way of living that turned calm into identity. Fudoshin is not a feeling, Hayato said. It is a practice, a way of moving through the world. I will teach you the system. He called it the Fudoshin method, a simple framework built from warrior discipline, Stoic philosophy, and modern neuroscience. It had 5 pillars, and each one mattered. Pillar 1. The warrior pause. Hayato began with the most fundamental step. When emotion rises, he said, you must create space. Without space, there is no choice. The warrior pause was simple. 3-5 seconds of stillness before reacting. Those few seconds interrupt the amygdala's emotional impulse and give the prefrontal cortex enough time to engage. Neuroscience calls this a pattern break. Samurai simply called it presence. Daniel practiced this everywhere, before responding to a message, before entering a meeting, before raising his voice during conflict. It didn't make anger disappear. It gave him control over what came next. Hayato asked him, be honest, do you react before you think? Daniel knew the answer. Most people do. Pillar 2, the unshakable breath next, was breathing. Your breath is the anchor, Hayato explained. When the breath moves wildly, the mind follows. Stoics understood this too. Controlling your breath was a way of controlling yourself, not the world around you. The method was simple. Inhale for 4 seconds. Hold for 2. Exhale for 6. This slow exhale activates the parasympathetic nervous system, lowering emotional intensity. Neuroscientists call it down-regulating arousal. Warriors called it staying alive. Daniel practiced this in arguments, during stress, even during workouts. Over time, he noticed something. Anger had less grip when breath stayed steady. Pillar 3, the observer mind. This pillar changed everything. Hayato taught him to watch his emotions instead of becoming them. When anger comes, he said, say, I feel anger. Never say, I am angry. At first, Daniel didn't understand the difference. But as he practiced, the impact became obvious. Labeling the emotion gave him distance. Distance gave him control. Neuroscience explains this through affect labeling, a technique shown to reduce amygdala activity. Stoics explained it through separating impression from action. Real warriors explained it through Fudoshin, a mind that does not move with every feeling. Daniel used this at work constantly. Frustration is rising. I feel irritation. I sense pressure. And every time he named the emotion, it softened. Étoile D, under Pillar 4. The warrior identity. Hayato leaned forward one evening and said, "You cannot master your emotions with techniques alone. You must become the kind of man who chooses calm by nature." Identity always beats motivation. Modern psychology confirms this. People act consistently with who they believe they are. Daniel had spent years telling himself, "I'm just an angry person," and so his brain reinforced that identity. Hayato made him shift it. "I am a calm warrior. I respond with clarity. My mind does not move." Repeating this wasn't delusion, it was rewiring. Neuroscientists call it self-directed neuroplasticity. Samurai called it training the spirit. Slowly, Daniel stopped trying to fight anger and started choosing who he wanted to be. Pillar 5, the daily drill's mastery requires repetition. Hayato assigned Daniel 3 daily practices. 1. 5 minutes of morning stillness. Sit, breathe, observe. Start the day with control instead of chaos. 2. 1 conscious pause each day. Pick one moment, any moment, to deliberately practice the warrior pause. 3. Evening reflection. Write one line. Where did I stay still? Where did I move? These drills weren't dramatic. They weren't mystical. They were practical. And over time, practicality reshaped identity. Hayato explained why most people fail today. They live overstimulated. They react instantly. They switch tasks every minute. Their mind never learns stillness. Without a system, the world controls them. With Fudoshin, Daniel finally had a system, a structure, a path. Hayato repeated the core formula so Daniel would never forget it. Pause, breathe, observe, choose, act. This was the warrior's cycle. This was the immovable mind in motion. And as Daniel practiced these 5 pillars, something inside him began to shift. He was not just managing anger anymore. He was becoming unshakable. Daniel didn't change all at once. Real transformation never happens in a single moment. It happens slowly, quietly, through hundreds of small choices that no one else sees. And his first signs of change were almost invisible. He woke up one morning and realized he didn't feel as tense as usual. No racing thoughts, no heavy chest, just a quieter start. At work, someone interrupted him during a discussion, something that used to trigger him instantly. The old surge of irritation rose for a moment, but he caught it. He paused, he breathed, he observed, and he chose a calm response. It seemed simple, but for Daniel, it was a small victory. Over the next few weeks, these wins started to add up. He handled minor annoyances without reacting. He noticed frustration before it exploded. He slowed down when pressure increased. People around him began to see it too. A co-worker said, "You seem different lately." His partner noticed he didn't snap at small things. Even his family commented that he seemed calmer, more grounded, more himself. These weren't compliments. They were confirmations. Still, the real test hadn't arrived yet. 1 month later, a major crisis hit Daniel's team. A client was furious. The project timeline collapsed. Pressure filled the room. Everyone looked stressed, and everyone looked at Daniel. He was the one who usually lost control first, the one who cracked under pressure. But this time, Daniel stepped into the moment like a different man. He steadied his breath. He grounded his body. He let the first wave of emotion rise and fall. He didn't let it take over. His voice stayed steady. His mind stayed clear. His presence stayed firm. He wasn't suppressing anger. He was guiding it. He stayed unshaken. Co-workers exchanged glances. Someone whispered, "He handled that better than anyone." Daniel didn't feel proud. He felt steady. That was new. Over the following months, stability became his default. Old triggers still appeared, but they no longer owned him. Arguments didn't escalate. Stress didn't break him. Pressure didn't push him into reaction. His identity shifted quietly. He was no longer the man trying not to be angry. He was the man who chose calm, who moved with intention, who responded instead of reacting. One evening, on his way home, Daniel thought back to how he used to be. The shouting, the shame, the loss of control. It felt like remembering someone else's life. He didn't deny his past. He simply no longer lived there. He remembered who he was and understood how far he had come. Daniel's journey revealed a simple truth. Most people are not destroyed by the world around them. They are destroyed by the storms inside them. Anger, fear, frustration, these emotions rise fast. And when a person has no anchor, they take over. Fudoshin showed Daniel something different. It taught him that real strength isn't loud. It isn't aggressive. It isn't about forcing yourself to stay calm. It's about building a mind that doesn't shake when life pushes against it. This is what the samurai understood. This is what Musashi practiced. This is what modern neuroscience now proves. When you train your responses, you reshape your brain. When you shape your brain, you shape your identity. Daniel learned that Fudoshin isn't about eliminating emotion. It's about creating space between the feeling and the action. It's about choosing who you want to be in the moment when it matters most. And that principle applies to you too. You've probably felt this: the slip, the impulse, the reaction you regret later. You've felt moments where your emotions led you instead of the other way around. But you're not trapped by that. Stillness can be trained. Calm can be practiced. Identity can be built. The immovable mind isn't a myth. It's a discipline, a choice you make every day. And once you understand that truth, everything in your life begins to shift. Stand your ground. Choose your response. Control your identity. Before you go, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and tell me in the comments what habit you're working on. Now, back to your journey.